Chapter 1. The Collapse. My name is Drake Miller, and 18 months ago, I was a man living in his own personal hell, disguised as a relationship. I was 29, working as an architect in downtown Chicago, and completely enslaved to the emotions of a woman who had turned my life into an endless cycle of walking on eggshells. "Drake, you never listened to me," Stephanie screamed from across our shared apartment. "You just sit there like a robot, agreeing with everything I say." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been working on blueprints, confused. "But I thought you wanted me to be more understanding." "I don't want a yes man. I want a partner who has his own opinions." This was the third fight that week, and like always, I had no idea what I'd done wrong. The week before, she'd been angry because I disagreed with her about our vacation plans. Now she was angry because I agreed too much. I felt like I was playing a game where the rules changed every day, and I was always losing. That night, after she went to bed angry again, I sat in our living room feeling like a stranger in my own life. I'd given up my Thursday basketball games because she wanted to spend more time together. I'd stopped hanging out with my college friends because she found them immature. I'd even changed my career focus from designing public buildings to residential homes because she thought it would be more stable for our future. And yet, despite all these sacrifices, she seemed less happy with me every day. What am I doing wrong? I whispered to the empty room, not knowing that this question would lead me on a journey that would change everything. Chapter 2. The Search for Answers. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Stephanie announced she was taking a break to figure herself out. She moved in with her sister, leaving me alone in an apartment that suddenly felt like a museum of my abandoned self. For days, I sat in that silence, trying to understand how I'd become a man who apologized for breathing too loudly. I'd always been taught that good men were accommodating, understanding, and willing to compromise. So why did being a good man feel like slowly disappearing? Desperate for answers, I started reading everything I could find about relationships and psychology. Most of the advice felt hollow. Communicate better. Be more romantic. Show her you care. I'd already tried all of that. Then I found a lecture series online by Dr. Peter Din, a philosophy professor at Stanford University who specialized in ancient wisdom applied to modern life. His latest series was titled Stoicism and the Modern Man's Crisis. "Gentlemen," Dr. Din said in the opening lecture, "we are witnessing the collapse of masculine identity in Western society. Men have been taught to seek validation instead of cultivating virtue, to prioritize being liked over being respected, and to build their sense of self on the shifting sands of others' approval." Something about his words hit me like a lightning bolt. I immediately signed up for his online course and sent him a personal email describing my situation. Chapter 3. Meeting the Mentor. Dr. Peter Din agreed to meet with me via video call the following week. He was a man in his early 60s with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through surface-level problems to the core issues beneath. "Drake," he said after I'd explained my relationship patterns, "let me ask you something. In all your relationships, have you ever felt like you were performing a role rather than being yourself?" The question hit me hard. Yes, actually. I always felt like I was auditioning for the part of good boyfriend. Exactly. And what happens when actors try to play roles they weren't born for? They burn out. They become forgettable, he corrected. Because authenticity is magnetic, but performance is exhausting, for both the actor and the audience. Dr. Din introduced me to the teachings of Epictetus, a Greek philosopher who had been born a slave but became one of history's greatest teachers of personal freedom. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. Dr. Din explained. For 2,000 years, men have struggled with the same fundamental question. How do you love someone without losing yourself in the process? He showed me research from the University of Toronto that studied relationship satisfaction across 1,000 couples in Canada and the United States. The study found that couples were happiest when both partners maintained strong individual identities. But here's the interesting part. Men who scored high in emotional independence were rated as more attractive by their partners, even though many men believe the opposite. Chapter 4. The 4 Pillars of Stoic Masculinity. Dr. Din taught me what he called the 4 pillars of Stoic masculinity, based on Epictetus's core teachings. Pillar 1. Emotional sovereignty. Your emotions are your responsibility, not hers, Dr. Din explained. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. When you give someone else the power to control your emotional state, you've surrendered your freedom. He referenced a study from Oxford University that tracked men's mental health through relationship difficulties. Men who maintained emotional independence during conflict showed 40% less anxiety and depression than those who made their partner's approval their primary source of self-worth. Pillar 2. Value-based living. Epictetus taught that a man must know what he stands for, regardless of external pressures. Your values aren't negotiable, even for love. Pillar 3. Outcome independence. You can care deeply about someone while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. Love the person, not the relationship status. Pillar 4. Internal scorecard. Your worth comes from living according to your principles, not from anyone else's validation, including hers. Chapter 5. The Ancient Wisdom Applied. Dr. Den gave me practical homework based on Stoic principles. For the next month, I want you to practice what Epictetus called the discipline of desire. Every time you feel the urge to contact Stephanie or seek her approval, I want you to pause and ask, is this action coming from strength or from neediness? He also introduced me to Marcus Aurelius's practice of morning reflection. Each morning, write down 3 things: what you're grateful for, what you can control today, and what you're willing to let go of. The first week was brutal. I realized how much of my daily mental energy had been consumed by thoughts of Stephanie's moods, reactions, and approval. When she texted me about picking up some things she'd left behind, my first instinct was to write a long response trying to restart our relationship. Instead, I simply replied, "Sure. Let me know when works best for you." Her response was immediate. "That's it? You don't want to talk?" The old me would have seen this as an opening and written a paragraph explaining my feelings. Instead, I remembered Epictetus's teaching. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. I didn't respond. Chapter 6. The Philosophy and Practice. 3 months into my Stoic practice, I was becoming a different man. I'd returned to my Thursday basketball games, reconnected with old friends, and started a side project designing sustainable housing, something I was passionate about but had abandoned for practical reasons. At work, colleagues started treating me differently. I was no longer the guy who said yes to every request or apologized for having opinions. When my boss asked me to work late on a project I knew was poorly planned, I said, "I can stay late if needed, but I think we should address the planning issues first to make the extra time worthwhile." Instead of being offended, he promoted me to senior architect 2 months later. Dr. Den explained what was happening during one of our sessions. You're discovering what Epictetus called the discipline of action. When you act from your authentic self rather than from fear or people-pleasing, you naturally command respect. He showed me research from Australian National University that studied leadership qualities in the workplace. Men who scored high in authentic leadership, meaning they stayed true to their values under pressure, were promoted 60% more often than those who prioritized being liked. Chapter 7. The Test. 6 months after Stephanie and I broke up, she reached out asking to meet for coffee. "I've been thinking about us a lot," she said. "I miss what we had." The old Drake would have immediately agreed, grateful for any sign of her interest. The new Drake paused and consulted his principles. "I appreciate you reaching out," I said, "but I'm in a different place now. I'm focused on building a life that aligns with my values." "What does that mean?" she asked, sounding confused. "It means I'm not interested in returning to a dynamic where I lose myself trying to keep someone else happy." She was quiet for a long moment. "You seem different. More confident, I guess." "I'm more myself," I replied. Dr. Den later explained this interaction through the lens of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only worthy goal in life. When you demonstrated that you valued your own principles over her approval, you showed her something rare, a man who couldn't be controlled by fear of loss. Chapter 8. The Shadow Work. Dr. Den introduced me to a concept that changed my understanding of masculinity entirely, the integration of what Carl Jung called the shadow self. Modern men have been taught to suppress their natural assertiveness, competitiveness, and independence, he explained. But these aren't toxic traits, they're essential aspects of healthy masculinity when properly integrated. He referenced studies from the University of British Columbia about men's psychological health. Men who embrace their full range of masculine qualities while maintaining emotional intelligence show the highest levels of life satisfaction and relationship success. I started practicing what Dr. Den called conscious masculinity, being assertive without being aggressive, competitive without being cruel, independent without being isolated. At a friend's party, I met Elena, a lawyer who immediately caught my attention. But instead of my old pattern of trying to impress her, I remained genuinely myself. When she made a comment about architecture being boring, I laughed and said, "That's unfortunate. Some of the most beautiful things in the world come from understanding structure and space." Instead of being offended, she seemed intrigued. We spent the evening in fascinating conversation about art, philosophy, and our respective careers. Chapter 9. The New Dynamic. Elena and I started dating, but this time I approached the relationship from a completely different foundation. I maintained my friendships, my hobbies, and my personal goals. When she wanted to spend every weekend together, I explained that I valued our time but also needed space to pursue my individual interests. "I like that about you," she said. "You have your own life. It makes our time together more valuable." Dr. Den explained this dynamic using Epictetus's concept of preferred indifference. You can prefer to be with her while remaining unattached to needing to be with her. This creates what psychologists call secure attachment. You're close without being clingy. Research from Harvard's long-term relationship study supported this. Couples where both partners maintain strong individual identities reported 75% higher satisfaction rates over 20-year periods. Chapter 10. The Advanced Lessons. A year into my Stoic practice, Dr. Den introduced me to advanced concepts that separated truly free men from those who were just performing confidence. Epictetus taught 3 disciplines, he explained. The discipline of desire, the discipline of action, and the discipline of assent. Most men master the first 2 but fail at the third. The discipline of assent, he explained, was about controlling your judgments and reactions to external events. When Elena is in a bad mood, what's your first thought? He asked. Usually something like, "What did I do wrong?" or "How can I fix this?" Exactly. But those are judgments, not facts. Epictetus would say her mood is external to you. It belongs to her world, not yours. This lesson proved invaluable when Elena went through a stressful period at work and became irritable and distant. Instead of internalizing her stress or trying to fix her problems, I remained supportive but detached. "I'm here if you need me," I told her, "but I trust you to handle your challenges." Later, she told me how much she appreciated that I didn't take her stress personally or try to solve problems that weren't mine to solve. Chapter 11. The Philosophical Foundation. Dr. Den helped me understand that Stoicism wasn't about being emotionless. It was about emotional intelligence and sovereignty. Epictetus never said, "Don't feel," he explained. He said, "Don't be enslaved by your feelings." There's a huge difference between experiencing emotion and being controlled by it. He showed me research from the University of Pennsylvania about emotional regulation in relationships. Men who could experience emotions fully while maintaining rational decision-making showed the strongest leadership qualities and relationship satisfaction. I learned to feel disappointed when Elena canceled plans, but not to make her responsible for managing my disappointment. I learned to feel attraction and love, but not to need those feelings reciprocated in specific ways. This is what Epictetus meant by freedom, Dr. Den said. You're free to feel everything without being enslaved by anything. Chapter 12. The Ripple Effect. As I mastered these principles, I noticed changes in every area of my life. My architectural firm landed its biggest contract ever after I pitched a sustainable housing project with complete confidence, unattached to whether they accepted it. My friendships deepened because I was no longer the people pleaser who agreed with everyone. I had opinions, preferences, and boundaries, which made me more interesting to be around. My relationship with Elena reached a new level of depth and respect. We both contributed to the relationship from positions of strength rather than need. You've become someone I can rely on, she told me. Not because you always agree with me, but because I always know where you stand. Chapter 13. The Modern Application. Dr. Den explained how Epictetus's 2,000-year-old wisdom applied perfectly to modern dating and relationships. Ancient Rome was actually quite similar to today's world, he said. Complex social dynamics, unclear gender roles, and pressure to conform to others' expectations. Epictetus's teachings about personal sovereignty are more relevant now than ever. He referenced contemporary studies from universities across the United States, Canada, and the UK showing that men's mental health had declined significantly as traditional masculine roles became unclear. The solution isn't to return to outdated gender roles, Dr. Den explained. It's to return to timeless principles of personal integrity and emotional sovereignty. Chapter 14. The test continue. 2 years into my Stoic practice, Elena and I faced our biggest challenge when she was offered a job in another city. She wanted me to move with her, but it would mean abandoning the sustainable housing project I'd been developing. The old Drake would have either immediately agreed or agonized for weeks about the decision. The new Drake consulted his principles. "I love you," I told her, "but I can't abandon this project. It represents years of work and aligns with my core values about sustainable living." She was upset, and for a moment, I felt the old urge to compromise my principles to keep her happy. But Epictetus's words echoed in my mind. "No man is free who is not master of himself." "I understand if this is a deal breaker," I continued, "but I won't betray my values, even for love." After a week of difficult conversations, Elena made her decision. "I've been thinking about what you said. I respect that you won't compromise your principles. Actually, it's one of the things I love most about you. I'm going to look for opportunities here instead." Chapter 15. The integration. Dr. Din helped me understand that this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about maintaining integrity while remaining open to creative solutions. Epictetus taught that we should act with justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom, he explained. When you stayed true to your values while remaining loving and understanding, you demonstrated all 4 virtues. Elena did find a great opportunity locally, and our relationship grew stronger because it was built on mutual respect rather than compromise and resentment. Chapter 16. The teaching moment. As my understanding deepened, Dr. Din invited me to co-facilitate workshops for other men struggling with similar issues. I met Jake, a 32-year-old engineer from Toronto who was exactly where I'd been 2 years earlier. "I do everything she asks," Jake said during our first session. "I've given up my hobbies, my friends, even my career goals. But she seems less attracted to me every day." I shared my story and the Stoic principles that had transformed my life. "The problem isn't that you care too much," I told him. "It's that you've made her approval more important than your own values." Over the following months, I watched Jake undergo the same transformation I had experienced. He reclaimed his interests, rebuilt his friendships, and started pursuing his career goals with renewed passion. The result? His girlfriend became more interested in him, not less. "He's like a different person," she told a mutual friend. "He has his own life again, and it makes me want to be part of it." Chapter 17. The deeper understanding. 3 years into my Stoic practice, I realized that the principles Epictetus taught weren't just about relationships, they were about becoming fully human. The goal isn't to become invulnerable, Dr. Din explained during one of our final formal sessions. It's to become unshakable in your core identity while remaining open to love, growth, and connection. He showed me research from the University of Oxford about long-term life satisfaction. People who maintain strong personal values while building meaningful relationships showed the highest levels of happiness and fulfillment over lifetime studies. Elena and I got engaged, but from a foundation of mutual respect and shared values rather than need and dependency. Our relationship enhanced our individual lives rather than consuming them. Chapter 18. The legacy. Today, I run workshops on Stoic masculinity alongside my architecture practice. I've seen hundreds of men transform their lives by applying these ancient principles to modern challenges. The sustainable housing project I refused to abandon became a model for environmental architecture and has been implemented in cities across North America. Elena and I married last year, and our relationship continues to thrive because it's built on the solid foundation of 2 complete individuals choosing to share their lives. But the real transformation isn't external. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. It's the ability to love fully while remaining unattached to outcomes. It's the understanding that your worth comes from your character, not from anyone else's opinion. Epilogue. The fortress within. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He was right, but it took me years to understand what that really meant. It doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means building what the Stoics called the fortress within, an unshakable sense of self that remains constant regardless of external circumstances. When you build that fortress, something remarkable happens. You stop seeking validation because you're too busy living according to your values. You stop fearing rejection because your worth isn't dependent on others' approval. You stop compromising your principles because you understand they're not negotiable. And paradoxically, when you stop needing love, you become more lovable. When you stop seeking approval, you become more respectable. When you stop trying to control outcomes, you gain real influence. The modern world tells men to be everything to everyone. Epictetus taught something different. Be yourself, completely and unapologetically, and let the world adjust accordingly. That's not arrogance, it's authenticity. And in a world full of men trying to be what they think others want them to be, authenticity is revolutionary. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my old patterns, know this: you're not broken. You've just forgotten who you were beneath all the conditioning and expectations. The path back to yourself isn't easy, but it's simple. Study the Stoics. Build your fortress within. Live according to your values. And remember what Epictetus taught 2,000 years ago. No man is free who is not master of himself. Everything else is just details. The man who masters himself needs nothing from the world, and therefore the world gives him everything.